You just mentioned about the possible attack on the Kremlin, on Russia's governmental buildings. Recently, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky just said that if Russia is not ready to end this war against Ukraine, then Russian officials should try and find the nearest shelters near their buildings and homes to try to hide themselves, protect against Ukrainian missiles, drones. Do you see this as another message to Vladimir Putin that Ukraine is ready to conduct such attacks on Kremlin and on other the so-called the decision-making places?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it is. It's pretty clear that the Russians, certainly Putin and his leaders sat in the Kremlin, care very little for civilian casualties across Russia, and really don't care much for their population. You know, that they don't have enough money to buy basic foodstuffs. They now can't buy any petrol. But that doesn't seem to concern Putin and his generals at all. But if they knew that the possibility that actually they might get a cruise missile through the window of the Kremlin, that might well change things markedly. Because I don't really know how Russia can escalate. You know, we've seen some of the devastating attacks, up to 500 drones and missiles being fired into Ukraine every night. Now, I think that is the Russians are absolutely full speed, as it were. I'm not sure where they can go from there. And I think if the way that, Putin and his leaders are a little bit cowardly, I think, because they've taken a lot of the air defense weapons off the front line to protect themselves. But I don't think their S-400s and S-500s are not going to be any good against cruise missiles. So I think Zelensky's been very wise there to really put Putin on notice that, if he doesn't come to the peace table, then those cruise missiles might well be going to his home rather to the homes of Russian people who are struggling like everybody else is.
However, according to the British newspaper Times, Vladimir Putin has at least 3 secret bunkers where he does operate independently in 3 different locations, which are similar because of the design. The design of these locations, bunkers, are similar just to create the image of one place where Vladimir Putin makes all decisions, and these places are also being used for these films and videos with Russian dictator Putin. Don't you think that it would be at least difficult for Ukraine to identify this place with Putin and target it in case of such a decision?
Well, certainly, and one would expect no less that Putin has various places he can go and hide in and do his work. And I expect some of these bunkers are very deep below the ground that even a Storm Shadow or a cruise missile Tomahawk probably couldn't get to. But that not all of the Russians can hide in these bunkers. And I think, if key strategic Russian military buildings and government buildings are attacked by Ukraine, then that will have a huge impact. I'm sure nobody's directly trying to kill Putin himself. But yeah, I mean, he might be able to hide underground and be safe there. But, if the rest of those around him who are fighting this illegal war against Ukraine start being killed, and of course a number of senior Russian generals have been killed, I think that will have an impact because, Putin can't just sit in his bunker on his own like Hitler did at the end of the Second World War. He can hide for so long. So yeah, one would anticipate that as leaders across the world. I'm sure President Trump has several bunkers deep underground that he could hide in to command and control his forces. So I think that's not unrealistic. Whether the Ukraine Security Service, Secret Service know about these places, who knows? But they probably know where the tops of them are. But these will be deep underground and very, very well protected. But I don't think that's the overarching issue. I think the Ukraine targeters, Ukraine's Secret Service know exactly where the Kremlin is, and I expect that is a potential strategic target that would change the metrics of what the Kremlin and what Putin would do. And I agree with others that this is the best chance at the moment to get the Russians and Putin around the table to negotiate a ceasefire and a peace deal.
Also, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin said that if the US supplied Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, this would lead to the destruction of US-Russia relationship. What is your take on that, and could this threat work with President Trump?
Well, I don't think it's a threat of war as such. I think it's more, a relationship we've seen over the last few months, and we saw at the meeting in Alaska between Putin and Trump. There was lots of talks about doing trade deals and business deals and all the rest of it. And in the past, it's commonly known that Trump has done deals with Russian oligarchs, and Trump has liked Russian oligarchs' money, and they still have a hell of a lot of it. However, having said that, when it comes to doing business deals, commercial deals, actually, the Russian economy is pretty tiny and has always been pretty insignificant to America. And Trump at the moment seems to be, his main line is to try and get as much money for the American economy as possible. But he probably realizes and knows that he's not going to get a lot of that from Russia. So the fact that the relations will be broken off, I would hope that doesn't change the metrics, because I don't suppose America wants to buy anything off Russia, and if Russia's not in a position to buy much off of America, the way that Trump seems to do business around deals and around financial deals, one would assume he'd just go, well, that's tough, so what? What is the most important thing, it seems at the moment, is Trump wants to get these peace deals. He seems to be leading the way at the moment in the Middle East. He's claimed to have stopped 6 wars already. I think he knows if he can stop the war in Ukraine, his much coveted Nobel Peace Prize, is a given. He'll get it. So I think the most important thing for Trump, and I hope the most important thing for Trump, is peace in Ukraine, and a just peace for the people of Ukraine.
Let's cover also new results of Ukrainian deep strike campaign against Russia's oil refineries. Ukrainian drones have knocked out nearly 40% of Russia's oil refining capacity, according to new estimates reported by the Moscow Times. What is your assessment of this, and could Vladimir Putin sustain such pressure for a while?
Well, I think, first of all, this is a brilliant strategic tactic by the Ukrainian military, because this is really hurting Russia. It's not hurting Putin, it's not hurting the leaders, it's not hurting the oligarchs, but it's hurting the common people in Russia, who now can't get fuel. We're seeing pictures of 2 or 3 kilometer queues to get fuel, get petrol in Russia. And I think most significantly, we learned at the end of last week that Russia is now having to import petrol from abroad, which is hugely significant, because Russia gets the majority of its foreign currency and the majority of its money to keep its war machine going from selling oil and petrol outside. So now actually, Russia is not getting that money because it can't, and it's having to pay more money to import petrol. So I think this is a absolutely brilliant tactic by the Ukraine targeteers, and it's really bringing the war to the people across Russia who cannot get fuel. And if they can get petrol, it's hugely expensive, and the Russian people are struggling anyway because food is expensive, inflation's high, interest rates are high. This is likely to cripple the Russian economy if it goes on for any significant length of time. And I assume that Ukraine will keep attacking the oil industry, and having destroyed it by 40%, I mean, that's going to take a long, long time for the Russians to rebuild it. So, a very, very smart move, I think, by Ukraine.
Do you feel that this could be the best strategy to bring Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table?
Well, not directly, because I don't suppose Putin buys any petrol himself or his oligarchs, but it is the Russian people And the Russian people who've been pretty quiet hitherto, in back in the 80s, when the Russians lost a lot of people in Afghanistan, the people of Russia marched on the Kremlin and demanded Russia to withdraw. But we know, we've discussed before, Russia has lost over 1 million men in this fight. But it's kept that sort of quiet from the population. What it can't keep quiet is the fact that the Russian oil industry is being destroyed by Ukraine drones and missiles. And everybody in Russia virtually needs petrol to run their cars, and they can't get it. So I think this is, really, really significant. It's not affecting Putin, not directly, but it could indirectly if people suddenly realize that what he's doing is driving the country literally into the ground. And so actually, indirectly, it might well affect him if the people realize this and march on the Kremlin as they did back in the 80s.
Could this also turn Putin's inner circle and oligarch against this Putin's war effort in Ukraine?
Well, I think there are murmurings that there is discontent within this inner group, and there must be. I mean, they realize what's happening here, and they realize, the gold standard of the Russian economy is their oil. That's where they get all their money from, and that it's been destroyed. So it's cutting off the lifeblood. All these oligarchs who get millions and billions of dollars via the oil industry given to them by Putin and elsewhere are suddenly realizing that money is drying up. And actually, the Russian government is having to spend billions to import oil now. So yeah, I think this is getting really, really serious for the Russians. And let's hope that Putin has a modicum of sense, a modicum of morality, and decides to come to the peace negotiation table before the Russian economy completely crashes.